Right. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. I am delighted to have Spencer Greenberg here, my friend. Today is Comprehensivist Wednesday. And, I don't know what's the best way to introduce Spencer, but, Spencer was visiting my library and he remarked that I'm one of the very few people who can go toe to toe with him on the range of ideas that he's interested in. And that is very much true. I feel the same way about him. But the thing that is unique, we're doing this entire series on comprehensivist. And I was asking myself, when I was looking for speakers, I was looking to see, what is it that each speaker brings to the table, what unique things that they bring to the table. And I think what Spencer brings is a very unusual combination of the science tradition and humanities tradition. He is very deep into mathematics. He's a mathematician. He's also an entrepreneur in the field of technology. So he brings technology and mathematics to bear on age-old human problems in psychology and sociology. And that's his strength. So I was thinking of what's the best way of presenting his thought. And what I decided was to choose a very specific topic, one of my favorites, and that is his study on habit formation, habit change, and use that as an example of how he does this, then actually demonstrate the tool that was the winner of this habit race of different tools, changing tools, so that you can see the use of that tool itself in breakout rooms, and then come back, share your takeaways, and then we will go to the second part of the interview, which is going to be focused on his approach to comprehensivism. All right, so that is the plan. So let's get started. Spencer is CEO, head of clearerthinking.org, which was responsible for this study too. So Spencer, firstly, welcome. It's
Thanks so much for having
to
me.
have you.
Great to be here.
Excellent. So tell us about this study of habits. Firstly, why did you do it? What was your thinking behind it? And a little bit more about it.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure all of you are aware, our habits really make up so much of our behavior. And so there's this important question of, can we change our habits? And if we are going to change them, how do we do so effectively? And we were really focused on creating a new daily habit as opposed to removing a bad habit, which is a totally different thing. This has nothing to do with quitting smoking. This is really a situation where you want to add a new positive habit to your life. So what we did is we collected a whole bunch of little tiny techniques that some people claim help people form new habits. As an example, visualizing doing the habit. Or another example would be planning what time you're going to do the habit. So those are two examples. And then we actually gathered 22 of these little micro habit formation techniques. And we used a study design that's more often used in farming. It's called a multi-factorial study design, where each participant in our study was randomized to get 5 out of these 22 different techniques, selected for them at random. And then we actually tracked them for a month to see whether they stuck with the habit that they had planned and how often they did it per week. And then in addition, we had a control group that didn't get any habit formation techniques. And then we had a final group that actually got to pick what techniques they used. And what was fascinating about it, first of all, most of the techniques didn't work at all. But there were a few that showed some promise, and one really stood out. It really seemed to work much better than all the others. And I'll give the standard caveat, this is just one study, so you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. That being said, of all the things we studied, this one seems by far the most promising.
Thanks, Spencer. How many people participated in the study over what time?
I think it was it was a month-long study where people basically picked a habit. We gave them the techniques, and then we tracked them. So I think each person was supposed to do 3 check-in surveys, and I think in total we collected about 1,200 surveys, if I recall correctly. So that would be about up to 3 per participant if they didn't drop out.
How did you manage to get so many people to participate in the study?
Well, we actually build software to run studies. So one of the things we created is a system called Positly for recruiting people for studies. So in fact, we can go on and say, I need 100 people aged 24 to 28 who are male, and and boom, we can get them, 100 of them in the next 2 hours.
Wow. Wow. So how many people have, are there in the system that you can access? So this is just one of the studies that you've done?
Yeah, this is just one of the studies. We run studies all the time. In the system, there's about 20,000 people.
Mm-hmm. What's the range of studies that you run?
The range of studies, it's a very wide range. I just ran one on perspectives on feminism. It was asking the question, when people say they're feminists, what do they actually believe is true? And it turns out there's a lot of different, at least 6 different perspectives on what feminism means. So that was an interesting study. We ran one on overconfidence. We ran one on sleep, and then can we get people to improve their sleep quality? We ran one on decision making, like we gave people an intervention to try to help them plan a decision. We ran one on goal achievement. We had people track whether they achieve their goals. So basically, what we're trying to do is say, what are the important things to understand about humans that could make a difference in our day-to-day lives, and we're trying to study those things.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so what I want to do is, there are these 2 parts. So first, I want to kind of describe this tool that was the winner of this competition, the habit reflection, in detail, and then make sure that everybody understands it. People can ask questions about it, and then we're going to have them actually do habit reflection and try to transform, make a plan to transform one of the habits. So could you describe this tool, habit reflection?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also should say, I put a little image in the chat you can look at if you want. So habit reflection, so of the 22 techniques we studied, this one worked the best. This is the one that was most associated with people succeeding at their habit when this was randomly assigned to them. And the technique is incredibly simple. So basically it involves 3 steps, but it's important that you do all 3 steps. The first step is you think about a past situation where you are able to successfully either change your habit or create a long-term behavior change, right? And so once you've kind of thought about a historical case where you were able to do this, and again, this is in the context of creating a new positive habit, like exercising every day or drinking water in the morning or anything like that, right? So then once you've done that, you picked your past situation. The second step is you write down anything that you learned from this past situation about how you succeeded to form new habits or any tactics you used that you found were helpful. And then you just make a list of all of those, okay? And finally, the last step is that you create a brief written plan for how can you apply those techniques and lessons from your previous successful habit to this new situation.
Okay.
So maybe, should I give an example really quick?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so just a quick example. One thing I learned about getting myself, one thing I succeeded at in the past in terms of habit formation is getting myself to go to the gym. And the way I would do that is I'd say, oh, I can only watch my favorite TV show if I'm at the gym. Otherwise, I'm not allowed to watch it. And that actually was really successful for me. So then I could say, okay, that's a past success that worked. Now, and that technique was really, really helpful. Okay, let's say I want to do a new habit. Maybe I want to get myself to, I don't know, let's say eat a healthy breakfast every day, right? So maybe, okay, how do I get myself to do that? Well, now I want to think about how can I apply that technique that works so well for me to get me to go to the gym to get myself to eat a healthy breakfast. So maybe what I do is I can only listen to my favorite podcast when I'm eating a healthy breakfast or something like that, right? So that would be an attempt to apply that. But ideally, you'd come up with a few different tactics that were helpful to you in the past. We don't know for sure why this technique seems to work so well, but a hypothesis is that it sort of self-adapts to every person, right? Because people really do differ. And we actually studied what are the things that people did in habit reflection, because we have all the data on like what they actually wrote. And it turns out they're using many, many different techniques. So different people basically are applying all different sorts of habit techniques. Almost anything you could think of ends up being in that list.
Thanks. So I'm just going to read it out just for repetition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have put it up in chat so you guys can read along. You can also cut and paste this. So when you go to the breakout rooms, you will have it handy. So the first step is pick a past situation where you were able to successfully change your long-term behavior or create a new habit. Okay, so you can start thinking about it now. What was some of, what were some of your most effective transformations of habit? So you can carry that with you into the room. Also, choose a habit that you want to change. So you have like the base and you have the goal.
Right.
That would
Well,
be
I should just add
Go ahead.
a new habit you want to create. Right.
Yes, very
Just to
good.
clarify. Yeah.
Very good. So step number 2 is write down anything you've learned from this past situation about how to successfully form new habits, or any tactics you use to help make this change that could apply to the new habit. Now, here we will be talking about this. So each person will get about maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes to talk about these things. So initially, we will be talking it out. And the third step is to create a brief written plan for applying those lessons to your new habit. So what we are doing here is that first we'll be talking it out. After, and then we will share, you can share with each other your experience of doing that. Then you can come back, share your takeaways. Then after the meetup, I invite you, I think the writing is a crucial part, because writing allows you to make sure that you've gotten everything in your, your memory, any connections all down on the paper. So consider this breakout rooms as just kind of the warm up for this exercise. So I would definitely recommend that after the meetup, you go ahead and write out the step 1, step 2, step 3 in written form, because that will give you a much more solid plan. Does that make sense, Spencer?
Absolutely. And I would also say, if you do have a written plan, you can leave it somewhere, just as a reminder, put it on your desk or somewhere where you're going to see it over and over again, just to keep reminding yourself that you have that intention.
Okay. All right. So that's the plan. So now this is all. I've tried to choose something which is very, very simple, so you can see the effectiveness of doing this. So I'm going to now make it possible for people to unmute themselves. You can ask questions. Now, this time the questions are only about clarifying what this method means, what you're supposed to do in the breakout rooms, only the clarifying questions. We have four rules that I've used for 4 years in my meetups. Rule number 1, raise your hand when you want to speak. The way you raise your hand in this format is by typing an exclamation mark in chat or raising your hand in Zoom. I will call upon people when they do that. When called upon, just unmute yourself, say what you want to say, and mute yourself back. No follow-ups. I want to have as many people express, give a chance to as many people to express themselves as possible. Number 2, keep on topic. At a given time, we're talking only about something. Right now, we're just talking about what this tool is and how we are going to, what we are going to do in the breakout rooms. All right. Number 3, be brief so that as many people can get a chance to speak. And number 4, feel free to disagree with anything anybody says, but do so courteously. Okay. So those are the 4 rules. So with that, you can go ahead and line up for questions. These are all simply kind of clarificatory questions. Anna, you're first. So go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, please. Go ahead, Anna.
So my question is very simple, and I kind of know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What if we have not been successful? I'm trying to use my cell phone, smartphone as little as possible, and I'm not succeeding.
Yeah, so what I would recommend is either 1, pick any habit you formed successfully in the past, even if it seems really different to the habit you're trying to form, and do the technique on that one you succeeded at. If you can't think of any habit you succeeded in the past, then I would recommend broadening it and saying, well, what about a behavior change? What's a behavior that you got yourself to change that you succeeded at, and then you can try to apply it to that.
Okay, let's see. Does anybody else have a question? Herb, you have unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
No, I don't, not now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else, or is it clear what we need to do? Joe, go ahead.
Really quickly, is there a difference between like age and complexity? Is there in your experience that we should be considering in our changes?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that question.
So
Difference between age and
basically, like
complexity?
age and complexity should be factors in making our decisions. So something like sleep, getting better sleep is more difficult for when we're older. So should we be adjusting for our age as part of the new habit?
Ah, okay, got it. Well, I think the key is that you want to pick something that it seems plausible to you that you can succeed at, but also that it seems worthwhile to actually attempt, right? Like that it's going to lead to a benefit. So, for some people they might think, oh, well, sleep is too hard for me. It would be beneficial, but maybe it's too hard. Or something else, maybe drinking a glass of water every day. I think I could succeed at that. So yeah, I think those are the main things.
Okay, next up is Catherine. Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on this. If we, through the links that you had in the description of this meeting, if we went ahead and already decided on a habit, wrote about an old habit we want to base it on, and wrote up a skeleton of a plan, then can we use this breakout to discuss our plan with other people, or is this breakout only to create a plan?
What you would have to do is that I'm delighted, Catherine, that you're a very good student. You've already done all your work, homework, but let other people do their work. I don't think, so firstly, I would say, go ahead and listen to, each person is going to get a chance to do these 3 steps live in the breakout room. If somebody has done that, you can go ahead and tell people about that. These are the steps that I've done.
Okay, but first
and
is waiting
then,
for everybody to finish.
Right, have everybody take a turn to finish, and then you can discuss at that point. Okay, it's going to be, the breakout rooms are going to be for 25 minutes. So and it's going to be on an average about 6 people. Not everybody, I encourage everybody to actually do the exercise, but not everybody might do the exercise. So there will be probably 5. So you'll have maybe about 5-10 minutes of discussion on an average.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, so I'm starting the breakout rooms now. So after 25 minutes, we'll automatically come back here, and then you get to share your takeaways for about a minute each, okay? So you can tell everybody what have you learned so far. So I'm starting the breakout rooms now. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. Okay, everybody is back. So what I want to do is that I want to give everybody a chance to talk about their takeaways from this method. Try to be brief because we have a second section of the interview coming up of the general methods of applying science to humanities, applying math to life, which is going to be fascinating. In your takeaways, you can also ask a question. And Spencer, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so Spencer, what we will do, please keep track of the questions and kind of the general pattern of takeaways. And then you can answer any questions that you want, address any kind of general points that come out of all the takeaways at once. So everybody is going to get about a minute to talk about their takeaways and put their question on the table. You don't have to deal with all the questions.
Okay, so I'll just write them down. I'll just jot them down instead.
You just jot them down and just
sure.
general
Sounds
patterns. Good. And anybody who does not want to be called upon to, does not want to share their takeaways, you can just type skip in the chat and I'll try to skip you. If there's too many skips, then I might forget. And if I call upon you, you don't have to say anything. I'll just go to the next person. All right. So with that, we're going to start with Andrew C., Sarah, and Mary. I'm just going to call upon people in the order in which I see them in Zoom, which is different from person to person. Andrew, go ahead. What did you get from this method? So we're talking only about the habit reflection method and what was your experience in the breakout rooms. You're not trying to list everything that happened. Just what are your takeaways? What are you walking away with?
I'm walking away with the value in just thinking about it and reflecting, because just in that process, it's making me realize some things that were elusive. For me, it was the habit I formed was making my bed every day, and I thought, well, why? Along with the technique, how did I make that happen, and why did it become easy? And I think what I noted as a result of this exercise was that as I would do it, I would observe the individual steps of making my bed and observe the structure that I was essentially building, to the point where I was almost observing the activity as opposed to doing it. So I was almost like an observer, kind of saying like, oh, that's interesting. It was like so that was very helpful, kind of turning into an observer.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Next up is Sarah, Mark, and Emmy. Sarah, go ahead.
So the thing that I took away mostly was that to form a habit, you have to have an end goal first. You can't just say, I'm going to want to do, lose weight, but what is that end goal of how you're going to get there? And the stepping stones for each goal, it might not fit perfectly, but you have to find what motivates you most to get to that goal. So everybody has to have a motivation and a type of intervention of what works for them.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up is Mark. Mark, go ahead.
Hi, just a couple of quick takeaways. One thing is what I realized, what I suspect is that people have very different ways of going about trying to change habits, and the habits they want to change are very different. Personally, one of the things I find that makes a difference for me, I didn't really talk about this in the group, but it's what's my motivation? Like, if it's something I want to do, I haven't really had much trouble making a new habit. It's when it's something I feel I should do, or life circumstances means it's really going to be a very good idea if I do something about it. So my technique is to try and find positive aspects to creating the new habit, but that has proven challenging in the past. I have found that making myself scared of the negative consequences of not changing is a very strong motivator. I think it's sort of like how Weight Watchers works. A lot of people don't want to be humiliated the next time they go to group, and that keeps them on the path, which is why it's been so successful.
Excellent, thank you. If everybody could just, when they are introducing themselves, just tell us where you're from when I call upon. So Mark, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Rockland County, New York. Though obviously that's not where I was born.
Okay. What about you, Sarah and Andrew?
I'm from New Jersey, Southern New Jersey.
Okay.
Also Jersey.
Jersey, okay, wonderful. Next up is Emmy, followed by Ellen and Merrill. Emmy, go ahead.
Hi, I'm calling from Seattle.
Okay.
I'll be really quick and just like responding to the negative justifications for pursuing a habit, and also like something that came out interesting in the group. So I believe in self-determination and kind of like a more holistic perspective of philosophy, and I have tried scaring myself, shaming myself, like trying to use other people to force my actions to change. And ultimately, external influences are not great when trying to change yourself internally. Like, they can give you a roadmap, but ultimately you cannot force that horse to drink from the water. And so my best experiences have come from setting myself up for success, feeling that I have set a system of success in the past, and not that I will be punished if I do not keep up the success, but that, you know, I have positive inertia. And I am pursuing this positive inertia in the direction of who I want to be. Such as, and it's interesting that the example came up of making your bed, because I think that is a really great example of like one small victory you can do every morning and say, yes, I did something, accomplished something, like I have this positive inertia for the day. So yeah, I think that was my big takeaway.
Thank you, Emmy. Next up is Ellen, Merrill, and Brian Cowley. Ellen, go ahead. Where are you from? You need to unmute yourself. I have unmuted you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm from Staten Island, New York, and in my group, I learned one or two things, and then it made me remember one or two things as well. So what I remembered was when I had created an exercise routine many years ago. It stayed with me for a lifetime, And for me, and I haven't heard this, but for me, what worked was I had seen a woman who was in the Olympics years ago when I was in my 20s, and she was speaking, and she so inspired me that it was an inspiration that stayed with me my entire life and helped me to get the exercise of the habit of exercise, and it's always stayed with me. So inspiration is important for me. The other thing I realized as we were talking and I was thinking is that sometimes if you're trying to break a bad habit, it's good to replace it with something else. So it doesn't leave the empty hole of that need for something. You find something else to replace it and do it quickly to distract you from doing the bad habit. And then the third thing I remembered that might help me in creating my new habit, something I learned in James Cleary's, I think it's Atomic Habits, the book he wrote. He said that you habit stack. And what that means is if you already have a good habit, like I have that exercise habit, and you're in that habit, and just as you finish that habit, go to your new habit, because you already are in the mode, and you just hook into it. And you set up the environment so that it's conducive to the habit. Like if you want to exercise in the morning, maybe you have your exercise sneakers out the night before near your bed. And if you want to do your exercises in your room, maybe you might have some nice aromatherapy around and some nice music. So you make the getting into the new habit, which is kind of hard in the beginning, you make it as pleasurable as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you. These takeaways are so incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Meryl, Brian, and Carol. Meryl, go ahead.
So I had a question. What happens when you don't have the success of starting the new habit?
Okay.
But we said rewards work very well, putting yourself on the schedule so that you know when you're going to do the habit works, and writing it down. Those were the takeaways. And putting the writing in a place where you would see it every day, like on your refrigerator.
Okay. Next up is Carol, Jasmine, and Nathan. Carol, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. In my group, we were talking about exercising, and one of the members were talking about how she was not able to stick with the habit of exercising because how she fell off of the habit of exercising because until she learned about why the true reason why she wants to stick with it. And it made me think, because this happened to me before, it made me realize that the end goal to a habit that you're trying to form, it has to align with your values. For example, like if I'm exercising because of reasons related to vanity and that is not my value, then I will not stick with it. But if it's because I want to prolong my longevity or do it for health reasons, and that does align with my values, then I will stick with it. So that just made me think of this point. What she said made me think of this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Next up is Jasmine, Nathan, and Minnie. Jasmine, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And for me, what this call reinforced was the importance of chunking and how having small, tangible goals within the overall habit is important, and kind of focusing on those instead of trying to hold the entire big picture, the entire habit, kind of just makes it a bit more tangible when thinking about the big picture can make it a bit more overwhelming.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. Next up is Nathan, Minnie, and Catherine. Nathan, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan. I'm from Vancouver, BC, Canada. And so the takeaway was from this one guy. He had mentioned about talking too fast to a person. So he says his he would kind of slow things down, think of his answer first, then respond. And I thought that was priceless the way he said it, because it made me think of some of the things I had said, responded to people too fast, which got me in trouble. So I'm going to count to 10 and think about answers, then respond to people. So that was a key. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Next up is Minnie, Catherine, and Joe. Minnie, go ahead.
I'm from Vancouver, Canada. Well, from this session, it's a very revolutionary takeaway that I'm getting. So far, I've been reading a lot of books about habit and following the reward model. But one thing that I believe I lacked was I was always giving myself reward after 2 or 3 weeks. So I think till then, and that's why I said for me, the successful definition of being successful is I don't get it, because for 3 weeks, I go amazingly well, but after that, it's a huge downfall. So I believe that for me, short rewards might help, because I feel brain till then, 2 weeks, I'm not getting rewards. So my brain is shutting and saying, no, it's hard. So it's procrastinating, and that's why that's downfall came from. So the one huge takeaway for me would be the small rewards. But the other point that I still don't have answer for is the motivation, because from past so many years, I've been blaming motivation, that I don't have motivation. So that's why I cannot continue on this journey. But I don't think that's true. I mean, I know it, but I still cannot connect the dots. So if anybody have any insight on that, that would be great.
Thank you, Minnie.
Thank you.
Next up is Catherine, Joe, and Eileen. Catherine, go ahead.
Sure. I don't have any unique takeaways. I do have one question that I brought up that I wasn't able to get answered completely, and I pasted my question into the chat.
Please read it out.
Read it. Okay. I want to ramp up from doing my new habit once per week, because it takes about an hour each time, once per week to every day. So do I move from doing it once per week after 2 successful weeks, or after 3 weeks of success, or 6, or what? How has there been research done on that?
Thank you. Next up is Joe, Eileen, and Herb. Joe, go ahead.
My takeaways are basically some habits were gradual, and some were actually just absolute, where they just cut off and changed something really quickly, so that it would depend on the goal that you're trying to achieve as to whether you can then, how your approach may change. The idea of momentum is also something that's really important, as far as just maybe keeping something going and forming a habit over a 2-week period, 3-week period, as a way of making it work. And I also think that one of the key takeaways was highlighted by somebody in our room, by the importance of mindfulness and self-awareness in this process of forming a good habit, and how they responded to whether it be a traffic light or a interaction with somebody, and so their habits basically were able to be formed because they were more self-aware.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Herb, John, and Deborah. Herb, go ahead. You're still muted, Herb.
Okay, yeah. The reflection part of the exercise was very, very helpful, and so was the writing. I had an old and a new habit. Procrastination was an element in the two. The new habit was to make it comfortable to make phone calls without feeling anxious before I make the call, which usually results in delaying making the call and thinking about it. And the old habit was where I successfully learned to get out of bed in the morning without procrastinating, where I just said to myself, oh, just let go, I'll have another minute of a little bit of sleep or dreaming, and then when my body's ready, I'm going to get up and I'm not going to think about the question even. And I learned, it came to me naturally. And the old habit and the new habit were not that distant in time. It was a matter of maybe a month or two. And I think that was helpful to it, because I still had the fresh memory of, oh, I learned how to really make my life more comfortable. So the new one, I'm looking forward to using this plan to do that. And the plan consisted of just being thinking about the anxiety first, and then imagining if I didn't have that anxiety, and then then there would just be a course of the conversation, and I couldn't predict it. I shouldn't try to, but I could be clear about my purpose in making the call, and then look forward to seeing what the call brought in terms of the path.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is John, Deborah, and Roshan.
Yes, thanks, Shrikant. I am from Philadelphia, where Isaias, or however you pronounce it, dumped on us yesterday. I was with Meryl and Mimi, so you're going to hear a lot of the same things. We all experienced, or many of us experienced, habit development failure at about the 21-day mark. We talked about a multi-level reward system, some sort of maybe more frequent small reward followed by a larger reward periodically. Trying to structure for success with either a schedule or a list. And Mimi talked about the fallout from failure in one area impacting other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up is Deborah, Roshan, and Juliet. Deborah, go ahead.
Okay. So what I thought was interesting. I'm sorry. Was someone else talking? Oh.
No, go ahead.
Okay. What I thought was interesting was that in my group, we sort of had like opposite ends of the spectrum. Somebody said that they use shame as a motivating factor, and then someone else said that like they reminded themselves of the rewards, I guess. So I was thinking like that's interesting. Maybe it depends on what the task at hand is. But something I thought of that like maybe would work for me, because I am not great at this, would be like kind of just like encouraging myself out loud. Because I know if I'm going through something like in the moment, if something, not even a habit, but if it's like an anxiety inducing event, like sometimes even just like saying something out loud, because it's a bit of a distraction, but it also kind of like makes it real, can be helpful. So maybe just like in the moment, like just encouraging myself out loud as opposed to just thinking it could be helpful.
Thank you, Deborah. Now the other Deborah with an A, Deborah Kivista, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Okay. So I like how Spencer said that we could pair a difficult habit with something fun. So I was thinking I could use my rowing machine when I was listening to my favorite podcast. And I really love that because that kind of tricks you. It's like fun with hard at the same time. And then again, the group talked about the importance of having a pretty quick reward, because delay of gratification can be quite difficult. So a daily reward and then longer term rewards also. And also, I had a professor once that talked about, instead of thinking about getting rid of a bad habit, because that's like a negative mindset, that you form a good habit and you put it on top of the bad habit. And so that puts you in a positive mindset, and it naturally disintegrates that bad habit underneath. And writing it down is super important. We talked about that because it allows us to reflect on it. We have to be honest with ourselves. It's like a reality check. And the last thing I wanted to, I love the way that the making the bed thing, when you do that, you're observing yourself and you're making it objective instead of subjective, which I think is really powerful. And finally, with the motivation question, I think visualizing ourselves already having that success is really powerful. And then making a vision board, like photographs or drawings or cutouts of you already achieving that goal, and then having your eye on the prize. So thank you. That was a lot, I know.
That was a lot of good stuff, though. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it. Next up is Roshan, Juliet, and Anthony.
Hey, yeah, I think many people mentioned a lot of the things that were common with me too, like visualization, like inspiration, and having the habit come intrinsically. And sometimes when I've had it hard to have an intrinsic motivation, I just like read about it a lot and read about how its effects are going to affect me and how other people's successes have been, and that kind of creates the intrinsic motivation sometimes when I don't have it myself. And that's helped. And one thing I'm learning is trying to set myself up for success, because if I don't make sure I'm having the if I'm trying to overachieve something or achieve something hard, then it's going to be much harder for me. So that's something that's helped.
Thank you. Thank you, Roshan. Next up is Juliet, Anthony, and Sarah. And start by saying where you're from. Go ahead, Juliet.
Thanks. I'm from Sunnyvale, California. It's in Silicon Valley area. And I actually had a really strong takeaway from this activity because I think my default, if I was to take a look at a future habit and learn from my past habit, I think my automatic unconscious habit when looking at habits would be to look at my habits from the past that I didn't succeed and what went wrong. And then I would get frustrated with myself and come from a place of weakness and that I don't have willpower. And I learned just during this activity that I should come more from a place of empowerment. So I really like the structure of the activity where we're looking at a past habit and what habit have we successfully changed. And then I scrolled through my past habits and I felt this mental shift occur. I'm like, what? I think I'm I realized I have more self-discipline than I thought, except when it comes to chocolate. Chocolate's on a whole other level. But then I felt so much more empowered. And so I want to thank you for that structure of the activity.
Good to hear.
Thank you, Juliet. Next up is Anthony, Sarah, and Jason. Anthony, go ahead.
Sorry if it's a bit windy. I'm in the Seattle, Washington area, but one thing I'd really liked hearing about is also, I agree a bit with what Alan had said about really getting rid of your bad habits, because I also think that they can really conflict with creating new habits. And in my experience, like it can really make you feel a bit defeated when you're trying to build new habits, and it makes me feel like I'm kind of ignoring the bad habits that I currently have. And so I feel like it really distracts me from really focusing and having a bit of a concentration about building new habits, and it also really makes me feel a bit defeated and kind of makes me feel a bit less motivated. And yeah, so I really agree with what Ellen had to say there. And also, one thing I'd really agreed about and talked about a bit there is building a schedule, which a lot of people can feel a bit like it can make them feel a bit robotic. But except one thing to make it feel a bit important about is making it easy to build a schedule, enjoying the process, which is one thing we'd also chatted a bit about. Just making it easy for yourself, like start with building a schedule of things you enjoy, and then build off of that with more strict things that you have to do. And that's one thing that really helped me build new habits in the past.
Thank you, Anthony. Next up is Sarah, Jason, and Mary. Sarah, go ahead.
So I found different tricks to achieve my habits. For example, to have a timeline. Basically, I set myself an objective to reach in time. For example, 30 days to do something or 5 days, and I share it with people so that people ask me where I am at to achieve that habit. Also to find a coach who I report it to, depending on what the habit is, of course. So every time he will ask me, where are you at? And that creates a bit of pressure. And also to try to find a person who has achieved that habit. And if it's someone that is known, to read about how she achieved or he achieved it, or to watch videos, and that gives me the motivation to do the same. And finally, like I apply like a 15-minute rule. So every day I pass a lot of time on that specific habit. I try to do the first step, and then to stay in that, only doing that for 15 minutes. And I try to do that every single day. And I'm from Canada, Montreal, Canada.
Wonderful. Welcome. Next up is Jason, Mary, and Pandu. Jason, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm from Sewell, New Jersey, which is in South Jersey. When I think about a lot of the times where I've been successful, it's often due, and I think it's great that Sarah went right before me because she did mention the huge importance of social interactions and your social environment in determining how well you stick to habits. I don't think it's any secret that one of the biggest predictors of how long you live is your zip code. And I think it all goes to the idea that the people you surround yourself with are in large part going to determine how well you do in life in general. And there's also the quote that you're basically the average of the top 5 people you spend the most time with. And essentially, so that there's one aspect of that. It's the social pressure in general. However you bring that social pressure onto yourself, there's unhealthy ways to do it and there's healthy ways to do it. Hopefully you choose the healthier ways to do it. It also gives you a metric to measure yourself. And this is something that actually someone in our group who had struggles with alcohol mentioned that he noticed that there's brain fog. I think he might've been the same gentleman who mentioned about the importance of sleep. How do we know sleep is good for us? We know drinking too much alcohol is not good for us. How do we measure those things? And if you have high functioning people around you, you can use those high functioning people as a way to gauge your own progress. So if I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep, well, maybe I'll be better at having conversations with that circle of friends. If I stop drinking alcohol, maybe my mind will work faster. How do you know that your mind's working faster? Is because, well, you're able to keep up in conversations with this high functioning group of people that you hang out with. Things like that. If I'm going to want to read books to expand my horizons, maybe it would help to have a group of friends who also are well read, or even if they want to do a book club, because you want to be able to be a part of these conversations better. So I think for every good habit you want to start, there should be a congruent social metric that you can gauge for every habit that you want to start, and it would help make it more effective.
Wonderful, Jason. I just want to say that application of your idea is that we do these meetups like this level of meetups and this level of conversation every day here for those who are new. And I've posted a link of the calendar for all our daily meetups. And I think that is one of the reasons my meetups are as valuable to many of the people here as they are, because they keep coming back, because that community angle I think is crucial to any kind of growth that we do. So we are social beings, we are individual beings, but we are social beings. So next up is Mary, Pandu, and Jennifer. Mary, go ahead.
Hi, first of all, Shrikant, thank you very much for hosting these meetings. Yeah, just to mention my takeaway from the chat room was that you need an accountability partner. Somebody said it in my chat room, and I think that's great if you have a different person to do it, and if you don't, it gets back to what somebody else was saying, I think Deborah, that you could just be mindful of things and have that objective partner yourself.
Thank you. Next up, thank you, Mary. Next up is Pandu, Jennifer, and Michael. Pandu, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. This is Pandu from Los Angeles. We had a very great discussion in our group, and my couple of takeaways are not really new, and everyone said time and time. Consistently writing down either why you are successful in a previous habit, as well as writing down the plan with respect to new habit. Writing is the real key. The other one, in one of my group person said, having a pause in the conversation, instead of reacting it, respond to the conversation. That is another real takeaway I'm taking out of this whole conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pandu. Next up is Jennifer, Jackie, and Lester. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hi. For me, I think about the habit. You either keep an old habit or take up a new habit. For me, it's important. I think about the value or the benefits. it is, for example, for food, the think about the junk food, they are tasty but not good for your health. So even though, like for me, some foods maybe before I had them because I didn't know they are harmful. So that when I realized, analyzing, okay, this is not healthy, so I stopped eating them. Same time, like I want to develop myself, like that's why I'm here, is meet up. So for my personal growth, or for I learn something to take care of family, friends, or be good for the community. So then that's why I move out and want to learn something to take up some new habit. I'm reading more books right now. I'm trying to like attend a group to learn some new idea, new things. So that's important for me. I'm very value. I like the value for me or ethic is very important. So if something is good for not only for yourself but for other people, not harmful for other people, those are habits that those will help me to move ahead to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next up is Jackie, Lester, and Mike. Jackie, go ahead. Okay, next up is Lester. Okay, next up is Mike. Mike, go ahead.
Originally, I went into the breakout rooms trying to quantize all the methods, most of which I've heard and agree with most of what everybody else has been saying. Fortunately, I was in the breakout room with Spencer, our speaker, and he convinced me that essentially everything works if you work it. And the magic is in the process rather than in whether you pick the individual technique. Like, and I've tried rewards and punishments and shame and terror and therapy and hypnotism and neuro-linguistic programming, the 12-step program, the first 2 steps of the 12-step program, benzodiazepines, cold showers, and a few more. I've tried these all, and the magic is in the process. If you commit to whichever technique you like and stick with it, you'll find you have the new habit will be replaced by a better habit. And Spencer's process acts as a contract with yourself that says, I'm going to stick with whichever one of these things I picked and make it happen. And that was my takeaway, and the process is important.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is Susan, Marco, and Leslie. Susan, go ahead. Okay, next up is Marco.
Yeah, I thought it was a great exercise because I kind of came up with my initial habit was when I first learned to run, the habit I used as an example, and basically, like, I remembered that I had a lot of feelings that I didn't want to have, like, you know, like I was not feeling great that day, but I went out and I followed the schedule and I did it anyway. So it's kind of helpful that knowing that, you know, I had all these feelings that I didn't want to do something, but I did it anyway back then. And if I did it back then, and also knowing that I'm going to have bad feelings of not wanting to do it, kind of like eases it a little bit as well. So that was cool.
Thank you, Marco. Next up is Leslie and Bari. Leslie, go ahead.
Yes, our group had a few really lots of helpful ideas, and I kind of merged a few of them into one concept. This idea of building a schedule, so there's a routine to the habit, and that these things you add to the schedule they can start with fun things, so that you get used to the idea of a schedule, and that a schedule is a positive thing because it's a schedule of things you enjoy. And then as you start adding things that require a little more discipline, It's okay to start very small, so it's not daunting, so we don't burn ourselves out, and we can be patient with ourselves while we're starting small. And as we're building a schedule to stack those habits, stack 2 tasks that maybe happen normally at the same time of day or in the same room or even at the same place in the room, so that it's just easy to follow the schedule and to do the new tasks.
Thank you, Leslie. Next up is Bari. Bari, go ahead.
Hi, I'm from Seattle, Washington. I realized for me, understanding the reason behind my why that I want to start a habit is really the deciding factor between if it's going to stick or not. Also starting small and being patient with myself, understanding that I'm not going to be perfect. And someone used meditation as an example that when you start to slip away, just bring yourself back, and you got to keep doing that. That's what works for me.
Thank you, Bari. I want to say this. I'm so grateful to all of you folks. I mean, it's just amazing, kind of the range of kind of thoughts and range of observations that people come up with. This is the favorite part of the meetup for me, the takeaways, because we work, people work very hard to make presentations, put things on the table, and then people discuss them in these breakout rooms where actual very deep discussions take place, and people are able to kind of summarize very crisply what they're taking away. And I think it's a really amazing to see all these people doing it. So thank you so much, everybody. Spencer, now the floor is yours, and you can talk about anything, you can respond to anything. Go ahead.
Sure. Can you see me? I'm trying to turn my video back on. Here we go. I can't see.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, cool. Great. Yeah, no, I was really impressed by the takeaways. I feel like there were so many useful ideas there. One question I just want to respond to was about should you sort of start with just once a week with a new habit or try to do it every day? How quickly should you ramp up? I think Catherine asked that. And what I would say is that although it might seem a lot harder to create a daily habit than to create one that's, say, once a week, in some ways it can actually be easier to try to create a habit every day. Because especially if you do it, let's say, at the same time in the same place, like, every morning, the moment I wake up, I do yoga for 10 minutes, that actually can be easier than saying I do yoga every, Monday for an hour. And so what I would suggest is not necessarily starting once a week. You might actually want to start every day, but starting small. So don't make it do an hour of yoga a day. Maybe what if it's 10 minutes yoga a day, or 5 minutes of yoga a day, or 5 minutes of writing every morning, or whatever. And the idea is you start it so small that it's hard to fail, right? If it's just 5 minutes of writing, you never really have an excuse not to do it. Even if you're rushed, you could probably get 5 minutes in, and then get it to the point where you're just hitting it every day. Now bring it to 10 minutes, now 20 minutes, and so on. So that's kind of my recommendation there. Other thoughts, I mean, there were just so many useful techniques that people mentioned, and that kind of speaks to the purpose of the habit reflection method, which is that different people take different things away from it. And, insofar as it works, I think that that's largely why, is that it's helping you figure out what works for you in your particular situations, which might be different from what works for other people. But there are certain themes that I think come up again and again. In addition to starting small, finding ways to make it more fun and enjoyable. I think we often over-rely on our willpower, where we say, oh, I keep trying to force myself to do this thing. Well, if you have to force yourself to do it every time, maybe you're trying the wrong thing, right? And a good example is exercise. If you hate the kind of exercise you're doing, you're probably doing the wrong kind of exercise. Find a kind of exercise you actually enjoy, and then the habit will be, 10 times easier to form. Sometimes we have to do things we hate. Nobody likes to go to the dentist, right? But for a lot of daily habits, it's not really sustainable to have to force yourself to do an unpleasant thing every day, right? So try to find a way to tweak it, either make it more enjoyable or find something to do during it that's enjoyable, or give yourself a reward that makes it enjoyable, right? Whatever it is. So those are just some thoughts.